News Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brady Batiste says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Sunday, December 14th, 2025. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 515 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to the Jardy Basement, and welcome to another podcast that is unfortunately a day after Ohio State has played a basketball game. But as I discussed previously on the podcast with the late tip time on Saturday and attempting to drive home afterward and early morning and all those things, it was just not feasible to record Saturday night. Ended up leaving Rocket Arena around 2:00 or so. And the weather certainly had an impact on a lot of things as far as what Saturday was. But I'm here with you now, and we have quite a few things to talk about because that was a game. That was a game. Final score from Cleveland, in case you don't know it, and if you didn't, I'd be surprised. Ohio State 89, West Virginia 88 in double overtime. A game that Ohio State never led by more than 3 points, only led for 5 minutes and 26 seconds, trailed for 34 minutes, fell behind by as many as 16, survived multiple game-winning shot opportunities, the end of regulation, the end of first overtime, the end of the second overtime, and still managed to emerge with a 1-point double overtime win. It was secured by a Bruce Thornton bucket with 3.6 seconds left to move Ohio State to 8-2 overall, drop the Mountaineers to 8-4 overall, and give Ohio State a positive taste in its collective mouth as it now gets ready to go play North Carolina on Saturday in Atlanta in the CBS Sports Classic. So the Buckeyes have a week to prepare for that, a week to rest, a week to work on some things. And we'll certainly do another podcast between now and that game. But for now, we're just going to really focus on this West Virginia game and what I think some of our top takeaways are out of this, because there's no shortage of things to talk about. As you run down the box score, a couple of things that really jump out immediately. There was a lot of talk leading in about rebounding and how critical that was going to be for Ohio State to limit West Virginia's chances. The Buckeyes did that. Ohio State out-rebounded West Virginia 38-34 in this game. Ohio State had a 48-22 advantage in points in the paint. Ohio State also had an 18-12 advantage in second chance points and a 13-11 advantage in points off of turnovers. The Buckeyes forced 15 turnovers, only committed 10. That was another thing that was really harped on and emphasized during the lead up to this game for Ohio State. Rebounding and turnovers. Those were the two really high-level points of emphasis for the Buckeyes. They ended up winning the rebounding battle, winning the turnover battle, and then turning that into advantages and points off of turnovers, second chance points, points in the paint. Ohio State led by Bruce Thornton in scoring in this game. He finished with 21. Thornton only had 2 in the first half. And of those 21 points, 10 of them came in the second overtime. The Buckeyes scored 12 points in the second overtime. He had 10 of them. He was followed by John Mobley Jr., who had 17, and freshman Amari Bynum, 17 off the bench, and was critical in Ohio State's comeback efforts there during the second half. And the fifth Buckeye in double figures, Christoph Tilley had double-double, 14, 11, 5, 14 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. And Devin Royal, 11 points, 10 rebounds off the bench. 11 points, 10 rebounds, 5 offensive, 5 defensive. I thought this was Devin's overall most impactful game here in a little while. I thought the same with Mobley as well. I wrote about this leading into this game, that we've not yet seen a game where Ohio State's really gotten sort of optimal level production from Thornton, Mobley, and Royal. And I'm not sure that I'm willing to classify this as that just yet, but Devin Royal played 42 minutes and 49 seconds and played a lot of that while dealing with significant foul trouble. He did eventually foul out in the second overtime, but Devin had 5 offensive rebounds in his previous 5 games and 10 offensive rebounds all season, and he had 5 in this game. For as much as we talked leading into it about rebounding and how well he can or can't rebound from playing in the perimeter, this was a strong showing from him. Ohio State had 11 offensive rebounds in this game. Buckeyes did not shoot well from 3, 4 of 21. That's 19%. It actually started, John Mobley hit 2 threes early, and after that, Ohio State was then 2 for 19 the rest of the way. He finished 3 of 6 from 3, and he had a big three-pointer late. And then Bruce Thornton was only 1 of 8. One of them was controversial, led to Jake Diebler's first technical foul of his career. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Otherwise, nobody else made a 3. Brandon Knoll was 0 for 3. Devin Royal was 0 for 1. Christoph Tilley was 0 for 2. Amari Bynum missed 1. Bruce Thornton going 1 for 8 is a little bit surprising. And I should mention this early on. This is the box score that we were given when the game ended. Some of these numbers will look different in like a day or so. The stat crew for this game struggled. And this is a weird thing to be talking about, but there were multiple inaccuracies as the game went on that just did not line up with what was happening on the court. For example, according to this box score, Devin Royal finished with 4 fouls. I can assure you that he fouled out of the game. And moments like this are why I keep or one of the many reasons that I keep my own play-by-play. And I will refer to that if in a case of like what we saw the other night, where I know Devin Royal had 5 fouls. They announced it over the speakers that Devin Royal had 5 fouls. Ohio State took him out of the game because he had 5 fouls. Box score says 4. Something got messed up there. And it was pretty evident early on that like the stat keeping was not entirely dialed in or not entirely, frankly, accurate. So it's possible that we might be talking about this a couple days from now, and it's like, oh, actually, so-and-so only had 8 rebounds instead of 11, whatever. Like there's going to be, I think, some adjustments to the stat pack, but there's a lot of stats to get into, though. when you end up playing 50 minutes, shout out to Connor Lamons over at Land Grant Holy Land, who submitted a question for our over-unders episode at the beginning of the season about how many times will Ohio State play double overtime this year. And I said, I think we set an over-under at 0.5, and I took the under because statistically Ohio State's played a abnormally high percentage of double overtime games compared to its overall history. And sure enough, game 10, Ohio State gets a double overtime game. So I was wrong. I'll tap my chest. I'll call that one on myself. But West Virginia was led by Honor Huff, who had 24 points. He's an elite 3-point shooter. He is tiny. He's like 5'10", $160, and just an absolutely lethal 3-point shooter. Led the nation last year while playing at Chattanooga in made 3-pointers. Came into this game leading the nation in made 3-pointers and finished 5 of 13 and just had some absolutely unconscious dagger ones that really kept West Virginia afloat late. So he had 24 to lead all scorers. He played 40 minutes and 20 seconds. Bruce Thornton played all but 52 seconds in this game. 50-minute game, he played 49 minutes and 8 seconds. And the Buckeyes went 4 deep. We got a Tayson Chapman sighting. He played during the first half as Ohio State was again dealing with some foul trouble. Had a 3-point play. I thought looked better than the last time we had seen him, which it's been a minute. He's not been in the primary playing rotation these last couple of games. Colin White played 10 minutes off the bench. Gabe Cupps played 8 minutes off the bench. He dealt with foul trouble. Really wish that we had a full, complete, accurate box score because, like, I know according to the box score, Gabe Cupps had 2 fouls. I'm pretty sure he had more than that. Yeah, we'll just move on from that. So I got some takeaways to get into here in a second. Before we do, I want to remind you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones, just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time to do all those things. And shout out, I was standing there waiting for the Ohio State players to run out to take the court. Anyone that follows my work on social media knows I always, when I'm on the road, always film like Ohio State running out of the tunnel and taking the court. Just, I like bringing the fans along with me. And in most cases on the road, we're the only media outlet that's there that covers Ohio State. And so I like to bring you as much access as I can in whatever form that may entail. So, yeah, I always take a video of them running out on the court, get all the guys running, and then like pan around, show the scoreboard, show the court, and post that. So I'm standing there waiting for that to happen, and I heard someone yell, "Adam!" And I look over, and it was Andy and Carlos Riggs, who were there watching the game, Ohio State fans. They said they're from Sylvania, so back home there, Northwest Ohio. But so they're loyal podcast listeners, and it was really nice to meet both of them. Had a great, quick little interaction there before the game got underway. So appreciate them, appreciate you guys. It was great to meet you. Also got another 5-star review on iTunes from MOP91111. So appreciate the kind words there. Bosses love that stuff, and it's good time to talk Ohio State hoops. So thanks so much, everyone who takes the time to leave a review, say hi. Love being able to give shout outs and love getting to put some faces with some, I was going to say put some faces with some ears, but either way, just cool that whenever we get to interact in the real world, let's put it that way. All right. So first thing that I think is worth getting into here, and that is that this game felt like it was over. West Virginia steadily built a 10-point lead in the first half as Ohio State really just offensively was just struggling. Could not get anything really going. The Mountaineers were hitting threes. The Mountaineers were getting decent looks and were capitalizing and had Ohio State in a 37-27 hole at the half. And then they talk a lot about like the last 4 minutes of a half and the first 4 minutes of a half. So Ohio State down 10, had been dealing with foul trouble. Devin Royal picked up his 3rd foul with 55.9 seconds left in the first half. Things felt deflating a little bit. And then West Virginia opened by getting a wide open dunk from Brennan Lorient, who had 18 points, was perfect from the floor, 7 of 7, 3 of 3 from 3. He had a big 3 late as well, but he scored on a wide open lob to push the lead to 12. Amari Bynum scored at the rim on the next possession to cut it back to 10. And then Bynum, a couple possessions later, would take a pass from Bruce Thornton, cut it to 39-31. But then things go sideways rather quickly. Devin Royal picks up his 4th foul with 17:04 to play in the second half. And then that possession ends with a Lorient bucket. It's a 10-point deficit for Ohio State. Christoph Tilley tips in his own miss. Ohio State's down 8. They trade buckets here for just a minute, and it's 43-35 on a Tilley basket. And then what I wrote down here was Jasper Floyd with an easy bucket. That makes it 45-35. Now, Ohio State comes down. Thornton misses a shot, and the offensive rebound just bounces off of Amari Bynum's hands. That leads to an opportunity for West Virginia. There's a missed shot, get an offensive rebound that again kind of went off somebody's hands. It just kind of bounced around, and the ball, as it tends to do in these situations, ends up in the hands of a deadly 3-point shooter, and Honor Huff buries the 3-pointer, It's 48-35 here. So the Buckeyes are down 13. They've now given up points on 4 consecutive possessions. Christoph Tilley goes to the basket and gets very easily swatted by Brendan Lorient. They come back down. Bruce Thornton commits a foul. Possession continues, and Jackson Fields hits a three-pointer. Ohio State calls timeout. There's exactly 14 minutes left. It's a 16-point deficit. The Mountaineers have now scored on 5 straight possessions, and Jake Diebler is furious. And rightfully so. This was a brutal stretch, and you could feel things slipping away. You felt like the offense was not clicking. The defense wasn't getting stops. Bruce Thornton had 2 points by this point. Nobody else, aside from a quick start by John Mobley, who had 8 points early, but then he kind of cooled off. It just was not clicking. Like, nothing was really working for Ohio State. And when Diebler called that timeout, I watched him as closely as I could from my seat. And I mean, he went right at his guys. And a lot of pointing, a lot of yelling, as red-faced as maybe we've seen him all season. And when I asked him about it after the game, it was that he felt that the team's frustration was then just feeding on itself and was creating sort of a negative feedback loop, I guess. And you then started to see it impacting the team's effort level. He was criticizing the fact that there were loose balls and guys weren't diving on them. It was very pointed. So from that moment, that was the game when the game flipped. And it did take a little while. Devin Royal found Brandon Knoll for a bucket on the next possession to cut it to 14. Ohio State strings together some stops here. And then this is where Amari Bynum asserts himself. Bynum, who in the first half had, if we are to believe the box score, he had 2 points in the first half. And then he had a couple there early to start the second half. He nearly has a 3-point play. It just rims out, but he hits both free throws with 12:26 to go. That cuts it to 12. Thornton just rips the ball from Huff. Ohio State goes up court. Bynum scores. Ohio State's within 10, 51-41. West Virginia called a timeout here, 11:49 to go. You can feel the momentum changing a little bit. West Virginia scores on its next possession. Nice play. Got the Ohio State defense moving. Goes back to 12. Amari Bynum gets his 3-point play on this possession. 11:11 to go. Ohio State's now down 9. So it's back to single digits for the first time since... did they ever get... Well, yeah, they did have it down to double digits or single digits in the second half, but Ohio State cuts it to 9 on this 3-point play. Forces a miss, but then goes back to 11 on a pair of free throws. It's 55-44 here with about near the midway point of the half. And this is where, after Amari Bynum had already just scored 7 straight for Ohio State, Colin White dishes to Bynum for a one-handed slam. That makes it 55-46. Bynum scores 9 straight points for the Buckeyes here when they were very much like, if not dead in the water yet, but what's the word I'm looking for? Floundering? Whatever that word I'm looking for there. And that Amari Bynum dunk started a stretch of 4 straight possessions where Ohio State scored. And in there, Bynum had an offensive rebound. That kept it going. So all of a sudden, Ohio State's down 3. And this is where it gets interesting. Bruce Thornton, in transition, has a really good look from 3 from a spot where you expect him to make that shot. And the ball doesn't end up anywhere near the rim. And immediately, he's yelling that he was fouled. Like, immediately, he's like gesturing, like looking for the foul because he got like raked across the arms. Diebler is screaming for a foul, and he doesn't get the call. And this was going away from me, from where my seat was. I was in like the corner mezzanine level sort of the arena. So I was going away from me. Then coming back my way, West Virginia has the ball. and they get the ball to Lorient, and he drives along the left baseline, and there's a little bit of contact from my viewpoint, and this I had a decent angle on it from where I was. Didn't look like a foul. Maybe you call it, maybe you don't, but there was a little bump there. It didn't seem like much, but they called that foul. And right on the cusp of Bruce Thornton's potential game-tying 3, he's fouled. It doesn't get called, and then Ohio State gets called for kind of a ticky-tack foul at the other end. Jake Diebler, I could see it happening in slow-mo. Like, he's about to get his first technical. And sure enough, when I asked him afterward, all he said was, like, that was a foul. He didn't cuss, but he was irate, and they teed him up. And at this moment, Ohio State was down 3, but now the Mountaineers go to the line. They end up hitting 3 free throws. And then on the next possession, John Mobley picks up his 4th foul with 7:06 to play. And and here's another example. So John Mobley credited with 3 fouls, but he definitely had 4 fouls. So 7:06 to play. John Mobley played essentially the rest of the game then with 4 fouls, picking up number 4 again with 7:06 to play. But Ohio State now is down 8 with 7:06 to go after having been within 3. This is where Bruce Thornton hits his only 3-pointer of the game. And it sets up this just dramatic push to get to the end of the game. And Ohio State only took the lead in the second half on a John Mobley 3-pointer with, how much time was left on that? He hits a 3 with 1:03 to go. And all I wrote in my notes was Junie ! I mean, it was an NBA 3 from the left wing, like highly contested, low percentage chance of it going in for just about any other player. But he looked more like himself in this game. Now, he didn't shoot with the best efficiency, but I thought he looked the most like himself since the ankle injury for sure. But that put Ohio State up 2. West Virginia comes down and gets a bucket with 36.2 seconds left from Jackson Fields. It's a tie game, and there would be chances to win this in regulation. The first one, Ohio State calls timeout, 24 seconds left, 17 on the shot clock, ends up in Mobley's hands, and he didn't take a great shot. I didn't love that play and was going to ask Diebler about it, but there ended up being so many plays. We didn't get into that. Maybe we'll ask him about it this week. But that gave the Mountaineers a chance, and they came charging up the court, and Mobley drew a charge. And again, playing with 4 fouls here, which I guess is the moot point if you lose at the end. But with 4 fouls, he draws a charge on Jasper Floyd that gives Ohio State back the ball with 4 seconds left, and Bruce Thornton gets up a decent shot from just beyond or just inside half court. Doesn't fall. We go to overtime. And in overtime, immediately what Ohio State falls behind. And this back and forth, critical moments in overtime came. Amari Bynum tips in a miss from John Mobley to put Ohio State up 76-74. And then the 5th lead change of overtime comes, and I just wrote, wow, from Huff, hits a 3-pointer, puts the Mountaineers back ahead by 1. Ohio State turns it over here. Bruce Thornton's pass to Devin Royal goes off his hands, 42.9 seconds left, and Ohio State has to come up with a stop and a score just to extend this or potentially win it. What ends up happening is they force Huff into a turnover. He dribbles out of bounds, 32.6 seconds left. Devin Royal gets fouled. He had been 2 of 2 in the game. He hits the first, misses the second. Ohio State survives a Huff missed 3. We go to double overtime, and this is where Bruce Thornton takes over. 10 points in overtime. Ohio State would score on its final 6 possessions in overtime. 5 of them from Thornton, the other one on a really nice drive and dish from Mobley to Christoph Tilley. And Bruce Thornton's jumper with 3.6 seconds left answers a falling down 3, or what I thought was initially a 3-pointer, but was not. But Huff, right corner, throws up a prayer that finds the bottom of the net. I mean, the dude is a heck of a shooter. And that gave West Virginia its final lead, 88-87, until the Thornton bucket. So having run down some of those like key plays there. This game felt like it was over until it suddenly wasn't. And the longer this game went on, the more times Ohio State had to answer. Like the Buckeyes did so much to dig themselves out of that hole, and then they still had to keep clawing and fighting to extend the game, to get it to overtime, to get it to double overtime. And that felt like a sign of growth to me, in a way that if they had been able to play like that and do that at Pitt, the whole season would feel different, frankly. So I certainly think that is a sign of growth for this team, that this felt over. And I think anybody that was following along, anybody that was tweeting me, certainly some of the fans that I heard in the arena, which was it's kind of a bummer, honestly. 6,400 fans inside Rocket Arena. I mean, they tarped off the upper bowl. Makes me think that the third time of Ohio State, West Virginia in Cleveland in the span of roughly 6 years, maybe that ticket market has dried up. Maybe they got to come up with a different idea going forward. But you could hear just the consternation and the groans from the Ohio State fans that were there, who were probably outnumbered, maybe 60-40 West Virginia fans. It felt over. And then the Buckeyes answered the bell in such a significant way for the final 24 minutes of the game. I mean, last 14 minutes of regulation and then both overtime periods. And that leads me into my next big picture thought coming out of this game, is that, like, however you feel about Ohio State basketball and where this season is headed and what this team can do, I think that this game, despite the result, probably just emboldens whatever belief you might have. Because if you think that, like, this isn't working and this team is average at best and the coaching's not what it needs to be and the players aren't as good as we thought, like, if you're in that camp, and there are some of you who are, I hear from you, winning this game doesn't change your mind. Because you can look at it and say, why did this team have to come back from 16 down against a West Virginia team that was picked in the bottom third-ish of the Big 12, a West Virginia team that's verging on top 100 in the net? Like, this is, we're going to see Ohio State against a top 20 team again here this weekend when it plays North Carolina. If that's how you feel about the direction of the season, then this just feeds into that like, this shouldn't have been a 1-point double overtime game. And I hear that. Like, I thought there was a chance that this game could go either way. And I did think that, like, this might be a more difficult matchup than maybe we had anticipated coming in. But I didn't expect Ohio State down 16 in the second half. So that is certainly a viewpoint that I hear, and I understand why people feel that way, and this game won't change that. And I also think that if you want to say, like, this team is improving, this team is heading in the right direction, and this team has some stuff to it that it is figuring out, and it is playing with like some toughness and some grit, then I think this emboldens that thought too. Because again, you're down 16 in what is not a home environment, at best 50-50, and it looked over. It felt over. And then this team just found a way to scrap and fight and claw and not play its best game and still prevail in double overtime. Ohio State's played 3 1-point games already, and the Buckeyes are 2-1. And the one loss is a bad loss, but it's a 1-point loss at Pitt on the road on a buzzer-beating 3. Like, after, again, Ohio State had dug itself a deficit and then had a lead late. This would all feel differently if that shot had not gone in for Pitt, or if the Buckeyes had gotten one more stop, or if John Mobley hadn't rolled his ankle, or, whatever. The result is the result, and that is a score that is going to hover over Ohio State for the remainder of the season. And it does cut down on your you get a shorter leash when it comes to building your resume. And losing this game would have really put another cinder block there on the balloon that is this team's NCAA tournament hopes. And it's still kind of crazy to really be dissecting an at-large resume. We're not even midway through December yet. But it's clear that Pitt loss is affecting how we are viewing all this. If Ohio State had not lost that game, and you're talking about 9-1 Ohio State, and the one loss is a home loss to top 15 at Illinois, that you were down 3 with a minute to go. Like, you know what? You're not going to run the table, and teams are going to lose games. But that's what happens when you drop a game like Pitt. It does change the tenor of the resume and certainly of like what the season feels like. This was a step, I think, toward putting some distance behind that. And this was also a game that, frankly, you just can't lose if you're Ohio State, not just because of the Pitt game, but certainly because of the North Carolina game coming up. Because now Ohio State's going to go play the Tar Heels, who at KenPom right now, it's a projected 78-76 North Carolina win. Tar Heels are 9-1. They beat Kansas at home. They beat Kentucky at Kentucky, and they lost to Michigan State. They got blown out by Michigan State. Otherwise, statistically, some of the numbers don't look too different from Ohio State. 44th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 24th in adjusted defensive efficiency. But at any rate, this is a game that people expect Ohio State to lose. And as one of the things I like to say is you can't lose a game you're supposed to win before you play a game you're supposed to lose. And so, to me, I think I come out of this saying Ohio State did what it needed to do. It survived. It moved on. The win's going to count. It's whether you win by 1 or 21, you're still 8-2. You still did not take another potentially resume-damaging non-conference loss. And now you have a week to get ready for the Tar Heels. So however you feel about this Ohio State team, I don't think this game moved the needle a whole lot. But I do think that how the North Carolina game goes could. And we'll get into that, like I said, as we go further into the week. Now, from postgame, something that I really thought was interesting, and I wrote this for Monday morning, but when we had Jake Diebler, Amari Bynum, and Bruce Thornton at the podium. And as Diebler was talking about Amari Bynum, he then offered an unsolicited comparison to Bruce Thornton. And this was noteworthy to me because there's no player that Jake Diebler speaks of more highly than Bruce Thornton. His everyday work ethic, his every rep work ethic. Like, if you ask Jake Diebler about Bruce Thornton and you think that you might have like time for a 45-second answer, like, you're going to get 3 minutes. Just buckle in, because he's going to take every opportunity that he can get to tell you about why he's a special player, about why he means so much to the program, why he means so much to him personally. Like, there is a really deep, strong relationship there between the two. They're both going to Milton High School this week for Bruce Thornton's jersey retirement. His high school, he's the first player in his high school's history who's going to be retiring or have his jersey retired. I wrote about that earlier in the week. I talked to his high school coach, Alan Whitehart. So I'd encourage you go check that out, and there will be content coming out of that jersey retirement on Tuesday. But those two, Thornton and Diebler, are really, really close. And then for Diebler to compare Amari Bynum to Bruce Thornton from a like work ethic standpoint and a leadership standpoint, just a toughness standpoint, a joy standpoint, that to me, as soon as he said it, like, well, that's a story. Like, I'm writing that as like my next day story, because that's a significant comparison, knowing who it's coming from and who and to whom that player is being compared. He, as far as like Bruce Thornton goes, like, and Bynum, this was a quote, and this didn't make it in the story. I kind of summarized it, but he said, so as far as Amari goes, he said, all he cares about is getting better and helping Ohio State win. That approach and that mentality, that's how young players become impactful. You can't tell when you walk in our gym if he had 50 points, if he had 0 points, if he played 40 minutes, if he played none. He just shows up every single day, and that's the power of having a guy who does that and the example that sets. He said, we've got that permeating throughout the entirety of our program. something to just kind of keep in mind as we continue to evaluate this season and this team and what Amari Bynum might end up meaning to where this team ultimately gets. I've had quite a few people say that like he needs to be starting in place of Brandon Knoll. Now Knoll played 19 minutes in this game. He had 4 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. Missed 3 3-pointers. Looked hesitant at times with the ball in a way that he didn't against Northwestern, but in a way that he kind of did against Illinois. I think we're probably going to see like the 29-point outburst against the Wildcats as the exception to the norm. I think if you're Ohio State, you're still expecting a little bit more than 4 and 1 than he gave in this game. But I did ask Diebler about bringing guys off the bench and like, do you need to like have some production coming from your reserves when for the most part, Ohio State's really not getting that. I mean, in this game, Amari Bynum had 17. Gabe Cupps had 2. Tayson Chapman had 3. Colin White didn't score. And I'm trying to find this quote. So I asked Jake Diebler about this on December 4th. But I said, do you need to have someone like Bynum coming off your bench and providing some production? And Diebler said, yeah, I think it's really important. And he talked about like trying to work lineups. He said, we're trying to work lineups where maybe we don't have our best 5 scorers on the court at the same time all the time. We certainly want that at times. And then he talked about like trying to get, the conversations he had with Brandon Knoll, how he can provide more offense. He said, Gabe Cupps has to continue to provide more offense. Amari Bynum's evolving. Yvonne has provided some offensive punch. Njegovan didn't play in this game. It's clear that there are just some matchups and some situations where they don't feel that there's a benefit to having him on the floor as opposed to either going small or playing. Christoph Tilley played 39 minutes and 43 seconds in this game. So it doesn't strike me as like entirely cut and dry that like, okay, well, it's clear that Amari Bynum's offensive capabilities are higher than Brandon Knoll's, and he's contributing on a more consistent level. But he played almost twice as much as Brandon Knoll, and it came off the bench. It gave the offense a little bit of punch at a time when maybe you are subbing a few guys in and out, and something to keep in mind as we figure out lineups and things like that moving forward. Tilley is I'm still kind of trying to figure out exactly like what I'm seeing from him at times. I feel like he came out and started the season so strong and really established himself as such a high level distributor and scorer and was knocking down some threes. He's not doing that right now. And the number of times that like he might have the ball in the paint and maybe have a size advantage, but he ends up kind of fading or not going to the rim hard enough and getting a shot rejected like he did in this game. You can see that like it's not all there all the time. But then you look down and you say, he had 14 points. He had a game high 11 rebounds and a team high 5 assists. And that's from your 7-foot center who, again, logged 39 minutes. And if the stat sheet is to be believed, only had 1 foul. Like, that's not bad. And I also think it was worth noting that Ohio State had 5 guys in double figures between 11 and 21. So this wasn't somebody had 35 to carry the load. Like there were moments where they called Devin's number and he responded. There were moments they called Mobley's number. Same. Certainly moments for Amari Bynum. And then down the stretch, Bruce Thornton just kind of took over and made the plays that needed to be made in that second overtime. It's just Tilley's just putting together an interesting resume. And you look at like Ohio State on KenPom right now. He is statistically, I mean, he's drawing 7 fouls per 40 minutes. That's 47th in the nation. He's shooting 81.2% from the line. He's shooting 61.7% from 2. Now he has thing is, he's 4 of 31 from 3. I still can't quite figure that out. He's 12.9% from behind the 3-point line. And it does look like it's making him second guess. There was one that he took in this game that like came out of his hands almost sideways. But he shot 31% last year. So you're talking about going from, 32%. You're going from 32% to 13%. That's almost 3 times worse than what we saw last season. And it makes me think there's something better there that just isn't clicking for him right now for whatever reason. And when you have a guy who is 81% from the free throw line, but cannot buy a 3-pointer after shooting 31% the season before, feels like that's got to change at some point. But then, I mean, he made a 3-pointer against Mount St. Mary's. And since then, he was 0 of 2 at Pitt, didn't take one against Northwestern, 0 of 4 against Illinois, 0 of 2 in this game. He does not have a game this season with multiple made 3-pointers. So just an interesting start to the year for him, I think. And it is kind of nice, like we're getting to this point where 10 games in, 5 against high major teams, we're starting to get a little bit more of a feel for what this looks like, who can do what. And ultimately, you're talking about one of Ohio State's most impactful statistical contributors. Even if it hasn't quite maybe looked what it feels like it should. Like, I just feel like for him having had that stat line of 14, 11, and 5, I felt like I should have been coming out of that game more impressed. And so maybe that's just on me, and maybe I'm just not fully appreciating what we're seeing. But he's second on the team in scoring. He leads the team in rebounding. He's second on the team in assists. He does lead the team in blocks. Playing 25.4 minutes a game. So I don't know, but it's just something I've been trying to wrap my head around a little bit. I think that's probably a good point to wrap this one up, because I'm noticing like it's going long. And frankly, after the game, I drove to my brother's place, who's about 10, 15 minutes outside of downtown Cleveland, slept for like 3.5 hours, and then drove home. We had a lot of stuff in the Jardy house today, including my youngest son, Owen, was in the church Christmas musical, and they were singing at the 10:30 service. And so made it there with 5 minutes until the start. So I got to see him sing at church, and then the musical was at 4, and it was a whole fun, family-filled day here in the Jardy house. But I'm dragging now, and I'm used to doing these late night podcasts. It's odd to be doing what feels like a late night podcast the day after a game. But I did want to get something to you, and this is the first time I've had a chance to record on Sunday. So seems like I said, good time to wrap it up here. But I'll be back with you again sometime this week. So just stay tuned for that. Until then, as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardyddispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty for getting us out there. Look for another podcast by the end of the week. Certainly setting up the North Carolina game. Maybe I'll get one of the CBS Sports guys to join me. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.